right now, Lampard's second time back here ain't really going to plan. And I've been thinking to myself, why exactly is this the case? Now, I'm going to say this straight. I wasn't expecting Lampard to come back and we're instantly going to start winning. It was actually on the contrary, because I was thinking, okay, the players now are going to think, my God, this is the fourth manager already. All the guys that signed in January are going to think, but I'm working on the third guy already since I've been here. I've been in the country for a few months. What is happening right now? All these promises that tons of these guys were sold in the summer, in January, they're not being promised right now. And for me, like, knowing that these are human beings at the end of the day, yeah, you can't keep your motivation levels up at this height forever. At some point, you're going to get demotivated. Your head's not going to be in the game. And I was hoping at least that Lampard's introduction as an interim was going to bring a bit of a spark back into the team. But I guess if you want to see that spark, you have to turn to your manager. He has to provide that spark. That's where Lampard takes responsibility. And I have to say, other than that game against Real Madrid, where I don't disagree with his lineup, for me, it was about being able to compete. Because if we use all those attacking guys, we're not even able to compete because we can't win the midfield battle. But that game is the only exception. Other than that, I've been a bit disappointed by Lampard's reaction. And a part of me is thinking, did Lampard really think about trying to secure the job himself? Which wouldn't surprise me, because this guy is like the embodiment of ambition. Like, he's been like this since he was a player. I'm not expecting him to lose that part of himself, knowing that he has enough opportunity to come back to the club. But at the same time, I feel like he isn't doing anything that he did during his first term. He isn't turning towards the youth, the players who are going to be here in the future, that have the long-term deals that were recently signed right now. We're seeing none of that. And I guess the thing that is frustrating me a little bit is that a lot of minutes are currently being given to a lot of experienced senior guys, but most of these guys are very unhappy right now, and I don't blame them. And the reason why I say that, yeah, is that when you're playing at the highest level, you're not guaranteed to be here forever. Players at this level who work very hard to get here don't want to be wasting seasons due to mismanagement, no structure, no foundations. I mean, we signed these guys from serious institutions, right? I mean, Kovac was honing his craft at Real Madrid. Raheem Sterling was dominating things with Man City. These guys know what the highest level is, and when you're promised these conditions at this football club and they're not provided, I can understand from a human perspective why you're going to be demotivated. But why turn towards guys who are currently in this type of battle mentally, instead of turning towards the things that originally was finding a success during this first spell here? I think it is a bit disappointing that guys like Mudryk aren't getting more game time to really like acclimatise into the game. I think it's disappointing that Chukwuemeka as well hasn't even been looked at all. We've absolutely wasted his season here, and this is what this club keeps doing for years. This club constantly keeps doing this, signing talents to have no real plan for them, no real plan to actually integrate them, love giving promises, selling dreams, and it's just like, it doesn't matter about the quality and potential of these guys, because if you're going to waste them, if they're not going to develop, if they're not going to get game time, you're wasting everyone's time. These are the things that are really disappointing me, and I was kind of hoping that Lampard would come back and at least bring a bit of like attacking spirit, you know? A bit of like youthful exuberance, at least. The things that he relied upon during his first spell here. I'm hoping after that another terrible defeat, that now Lampard's like, listen, I've got nothing to lose. Pochettino should be announced very soon. Right now, if I want to do anything in football, how I end my spell with my football club could give me opportunities elsewhere. That's how I'm seeing things right now. And I think right now, the only way to really do that now is to go back to what you put your name on. Go back to using the youth. And I say this not to sound naive, because even if these young guys play, I'm not expecting us to turn things around and we're going to start instantly winning. That would be incredibly naive, yeah? But for me, it's about how you perform at least. And I think since Lampard's come back, not even all down to his fault, but the demotivation levels are at an all-time low. And as I said, after we got knocked out against Real Madrid, what is there to play for? What is there to do right now? There's absolutely nothing. So this seems to be like the only period now where there's no real pressure at all. Like, even though I see us losing more games, I don't think we're going to get relegated. I think we just about have enough points to like safeguard ourselves for next season. But right now, as the interim, as a manager that understands that developing youth is key, continuity is key, at least get these guys minutes right now to start preparing for next season. Because Pochettino is going to be watching, yeah? I think I saw positive signs of Madueke getting opportunities against Arsenal. The guy had a great performance, and it was no surprise because when he has got minutes, he has looked dangerous. He hasn't been a passenger. He hasn't been hiding. So more of that, please. I think Mudryk now has to start playing games. And I think braver decisions have to be made now around senior players. As I said, I completely understand why they would be frustrated. If you're coming from Paris Saint-Germain, Real Madrid, Man City, for God's sake, come on, your standards are up here. So I'm not going to be getting rude to guys who really know what it's like to play at this level. That would be stupid. But a lot of these guys might not be here from next season. So what are we really doing with this opportunity we have now? You know, let's start to recontextualize what we're doing with this season. I don't want to play mindless, meaningless games because players are putting in meaningless performances. That's what I'm seeing right now. But there's a lot of guys that would take advantage of the remaining game time. There's going to be a lot of young players that have been waiting for opportunities that were promised when we signed them. You were going to get game time. We have plans to develop you. You are here for the future. Project 2030. Now, it's time we start actually aligning our words and actions together now. Because for me, it's been a personal frustration. Not only for me, but I know for all of you guys who have been watching me for a long time. But this constant mismanagement over the years. No clear identity. No clear thought patterns. No clear ideas around the vision of, you know, what players to build around and who not to. It's just been an absolute mess all the time. And it's honestly, we deserve this season, in my opinion. We absolutely deserve the season because for a few years now, you know, these cracks have never been plastered over. They've been growing and growing and growing and growing. And this season, we magnify things tenfold by then adding, 50 new players to the squad, not selling any of the guys who are looking to get moves, denying loan moves too for guys like Lewis Hall and Chukwuemeka in January for what? You know, we've completely botched the management. We've completely botched everything this season. And for me, failure on this scale is not down to Potter or this player or that guy. I know in moments like this, it's so easy to just let your frustration focus on the guy that annoys you the most. But that isn't fair, yeah? It's a collective failure. And for me, more responsibility goes to the board. Now, I saw and read Todd Bowley's, his interviews after the LA Dodgers World Series win, I think a few days back. And he admitted, he held his hands up. Listen, we learned a lot of things ourselves. And I think, I want to hear that because it would worry me if there was no admission or acceptance or if no one was taking responsibility. But I think the biggest mistake we made was we undermined what anyone could do this season. We undermined every single manager. We've undermined the players as well too. Because this season, we've used, I think, 10 or 11 different formations. Do you understand how mad that is? In one season, 10 to 11 different formations. Now, if I gave you guys a number in terms of the different lineups we've seen, it far exceeds that. It's been a ridiculous amount of rotation and different players being used. And the mad thing is that this is the issue we have right now. If you turn towards using certain players, it implies you have to play a certain way. But that certain way we do play, we can't play to the highest level. Why? Because we haven't had enough time really training on how to play that way, how to work on our weaknesses. And I'll give you an example. When we signed Felix and everyone, Graham Potter used a different formation compared to what he was using beforehand. He's thinking, I've got Joao Felix. His best position is playing in behind a striker. The only way to really fit him is to play him in a 4-2-3-1, but I've got wingers out wide, Felix in behind, and Havertz up front. And even though we looked a bit more fluid on the ball, we were looking a bit more creative. We saw good halves against teams like West Ham and co throughout. The fundamental flaw and weakness was that these guys can't press off the ball. They can't do that. So we were constantly giving away silly counterattacks, and we weren't able to, kill teams off by attacking, because if you're going to introduce brand new attacking players playing together for the first time, you're incredibly naive, or you don't understand just how the details work in this game if you think you can instantly expect these guys to get in sync, start working together, and start playing beautiful football. The only way to build upon those ideas is repetition in training, repetition of playing with your teammates, slowly building things over time. But to do that in January, where the goal was to try and hopefully secure Champions League football, every time a system didn't work for 1, 2, 3 games, we turned to using something else, and we're literally repeating the same mistakes. It's okay. We're able to compete slightly more doing this thing now, but oh no, we have a fundamental flaw and weakness in how we're playing. Crap, it's actually done nothing. Let's go back to the drawing boards and work on something again. And for me, I can only blame the management, because I don't understand the insistence on why so many had to come right now. Especially when we couldn't even sell most of these guys. With the prime story being Hakan Ziyech. I mean, the guy was in Paris getting ready to sign for them. We couldn't even finalize that loan move because everyone at the club was working intensively on Enzo Fernandez. That is the mistake. That's the issue. And then it's like, what are you doing for the new players you're signing? What are you doing for the managers? And what are you doing for these players themselves? Who, a lot of these guys have been pissed off for a long time. They've wanted to go for a long time. They haven't been able to because they're getting priced out. Because their wages are way too high. Or we don't like the money that we're getting for them. And it's just like you're creating slowly over the seasons this negative mentality around the squads. One of like no hope, no ambition, because you're thinking I'm wasting my time here right now and I can't even leave. That comes down to the upper management who really have control and say on what needs to be done. So it goes back to what I said earlier in this video. At least Bowley and the board have acknowledged that they've made mistakes, and they have to really acknowledge that right now, because we've been put in a very ridiculous situation, and I'm getting a little bit worried, my friends, for next summer, because every single summer, clubs that want to buy our guys make moves for them right near the end of the window. And reports are saying we hope to clear most of the squad before pre-season begins. Already that sounds ridiculously ambitious. Why would clubs do favours for us? I'd like to hope something happens. Maybe we are going to offer reduced sales because it's more about reducing the wage bill. We'll find out over the time. But we have new signings will be introduced from next season. We hope to sign even more on top as well too. I just feel like, am I going to expect like another great season? I'm not too sure, my friends. I'm not too sure. And even when Pochettino finally arrives, hopefully we can reduce the squad. Hopefully it's like, listen, the way we're playing, this guy, that guy, that guy, that guy. I'm building this team around these guys and this way of playing. That's what I can pray for right now, because unless you have a clear structure and foundation where people every single week are working towards improving on this way of playing, building their relationships to improve the way of playing as well too, you're not going to do nothing. And for me, it's simply been this. I think that since the transfer ban, we've spent over $1 billion, easily $1 billion since that transfer ban. I think that's a ridiculous amount of money, and I'm starting to really get frustrated by just how sickening amounts of money are spent in this game, and there seems to be no real plan or structure from guys on the top on how to actually make it work. Like, it feels stupidly naive to just think the managers will come in and make it work just like that. Like, they could do that, and I think the only way any manager was to have any success for this season was if they were so, like, cold and ruthless and were like, listen, this is my 25-man squad. You 10, 11 guys, I'm not even going to acknowledge your existence. Don't even look at me. You're going to be training with the under-21s. Get out my sight. But even when you're doing that, consequences come from that. Let's not forget that. There's no perfect solution that has no consequences. Whatever decision you make is going to have a consequence. And I say this because realistically, was Lampard going to come in and get us winning again? I just don't see it happening at all. I think after seeing so much of the season going on, as it was coming to an end, I've kind of accepted, okay, this is as good as it's going to get right now. We are not going to get better. Ignore the talent you're seeing on display. It's meaningless if there's no proper plan on how to use and play them. And I don't think any manager knows what to do. It's too demanding. It's too overwhelming. Like, constantly dealing with like a first 11 worth of unhappy players who are questioning why they aren't playing, especially when every week you're losing games. Of course that's going to happen. Like, we have to understand the realities of how this game works, yeah? Sometimes I think it's a bit naive in terms of, as long as you win, everything's hunky-dory, everything's fine. No. you're creating pressure everywhere, and that's going to trickle down and transpire, and it's going to result in tons of negativity, which we're seeing in our performances. Like, for years, we've had no real proper identity or way of playing. Let's keep it real. I mean, you can't keep hiring in these new managers every year who have their own distinct styles, and then the players you're signing for them are getting left for the new guys to take over. Like, we've not had a proper unified way of playing, and I'm even going to say this under Thomas Tuchel. Now, I know some of you guys will hear me say Tuchel, and your brains are automatically going to hear agenda. Do what you have to do, but for the rest of you guys, yeah, Tuchel came in at the time where there were similar issues, but on a small, where there were similar issues that Lampard faced, but it was a much smaller scale, where he wanted to use the youth, he wanted to play an attacking 4-3-3, but you didn't have a DM that you needed with the physicality and legs in behind. You didn't have certain profiles to really make that football really happen. And instead, he had a lot of possession play guys that, listen, he found ways to use them, but ideally, this was not the direction he wanted this squad to head towards. So in came Thomas Tuchel, and he thinks to himself, okay, this squad doesn't really fit nothing right now. All I can do right now, because this is Chelsea Football Club, and all we've ever known these guys is that winning is more important than anything else. I'm going to bring you guys wins, yeah? I'm going to make us difficult to play against, and I'm going to rely upon intensity. I'm going to focus on the strengths that this squad currently has. These guys can keep the ball well, and these guys have intensity to press to. And, you know, credit goes to Lampard, because again, he's coming as an interim, and he's mentioned that the intensity levels are non-existent. They don't work. And we can't forget that when we won the Champions League under Thomas Tuchel, we were able to play intensity football due to that good pre-season and all the work done to get our fitness levels up. So these things that happen before a season starts are also very important details to get right if you want to do anything serious in the season. But even with the success we found under Tuchel, this wasn't a sustainable way of playing. This relied upon the now, and we really struggled to transition away from that to become something a bit more, to have more edges in terms of how we were as a system, how we were as a team, because we got found out in the end, and that was reflected in the criminal lack of goals and our difficulty to even create opportunities that happened as the season was going on. And since then, we've compounded the issue by signing even more players on top when things weren't even fully decided and organised to begin with. And we made things 10 times worse. So right now, there is no magical tactic or magical coaching or magical anything that's going to turn us around and make us look like half a team. That's not going to happen. So it's about prioritizing your battles and prioritizing what's more important. And I think that is next season. And I think that is the players who are going to be here next season should be getting the minutes and opportunities. That's what I want to see now. And this is what Frank Lampard has to do. Instead of picking lineups to focus on getting results, results mean nothing right now. You're not going to get sacked as an interim. We're way past that right now. It's about getting the next guy in for next season. We can't keep seeing players who won't be playing getting minutes anymore. I sympathise for them. From a business point of view, I can understand that you want to keep their values relatively high at least by giving them minutes. But, I mean, come on. If these guys are going to play when the heads aren't even in the game right now, they're going to undermine their own game, undermine their own performance. And this kind of tells me that, it's very easy for us to be kick the senior guys out, use the young players from the safety of our environments, because we're not there in the training grounds having these conversations, seeing the angry faces, not having to deal with the commotion. We're not there doing that right now, because that's the only thing I can think of to explain why we saw that lineup we saw against Arsenal, where guys like Aspie and Silva and others are playing in the team. What was the need for that really? What are they really offering to help us beat Arsenal? It's this constant thing of trying to make everyone happy, making no one happy at the same time. So for me, at least keep the happy faces for the guys that are going to be at this football club, that are still going to have a future here, that want to have a future here, that have been bought for big money. Most of these guys at the club have known since before most of this stuff even happened that they were going to be leaving and they had no future. So let's keep things real with them. Apologise, whatever. But accept that, okay, from this point forwards, you won't be part of the team anymore, because I have to do what's best and right for the football club. And that's on the young youth that we've signed and spent big money on. I think it's an absolute disgrace that Kans has not got no minutes. And he performs well in training from everything I'm hearing too. He's a big talent. But at this level, it's not even about, okay, the best guys in training getting opportunities. It's about saving faces. It's about appeasing the seniors. And it's getting a bit ridiculous right now. And yeah, until we really start to go back to the basics and really understand and focus on what type of club we're trying to be right now, for good's sake. Because you can win, but winning for the sake of winning isn't the only way to do things. And I just think if anyone thinks that we can do what Roman did during his time, where most clubs didn't have the money they have right now, where most clubs don't have the top players they have right now, when there was even less competition financially from other clubs who couldn't compete with us on that same level. That shit doesn't work anymore right now. And it will never work anymore. So I'm hoping from Lampard we see a reaction now against Bournemouth. I think that's an opportunity to try new things and really just focus and settle on one clear defined way of playing. Listen, 4-3-3 is your way of playing. Use the young guys in the team and don't rely overly on nonsense defending. You know, like, we're going to be losing these games regardless. It's about how we lose right now, the performance we want to see. At least create a little bit of uplift. So my friends,